Illuminati on my mind, soul, and body. Secrets aside, try to keep the eye on me.
May I have the password, please?
The world cannot be the same.
Stock exchange, the decay in the Hang Seng as Manhattan prepares for a massive evacuation. In other cities around the world, people are voluntarily evacuating population centers.
Something happening here. I think it's time we stop, children, watch that sound. Everybody look what's going down.
Truth Connections.
Good evening, welcome. You are listening to Truth Connections. My name is Catherine Buckaloo, and we are broadcasting live tonight from 107.7 FM in New Orleans, UPRN, the Paranormal Radio Network, and TruthConnections.com. Thank you all very much for listening. I would like to begin this evening by asking everyone to send relief, prayers, or good vibes, whatever they can do, to the people of the Philippines. The truth is that the extent of damage, property, and loss of life is still unknown, and my heart truly does go out to them. So send them some loving energy or whatever you can do. There's a lot of groups that have started on Facebook, and on the internet you can Google how to help them or what's going on, what you can do for relief. Okay, on with the show. Jim Morrison was quoted saying, "I believe in a long, prolonged derangement of the senses." And he thought this was the only way to snap yourself out of the spell the old magicians put us under. Tonight's guest is Freeman Fly. He has been on the cutting edge of conspiracy for nearly 2 decades. What he has to say will surely open and blow your mind. Freeman studied interdisciplinary studies specializing in ancient environmental architecture. He is an award-winning TV producer, filmmaker, radio host, and lecturer. He is currently working on his show called Freeman TV and the Friendship Agenda Network. Freeman is considered an expert in the study of occult, trauma-based mind control, Illuminati symbolism, and ancient civilizations. He has the ability to piece together many aspects that make a strong argument for conspiracy fact, not fiction. Freeman also created the first documentary about HAARP and the first televised documentary about chemtrails. Please help me welcome Freeman Fly to the show. Welcome, Freeman.
Hey, Catherine. Fantastic to be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. It's great to talk to you again. How did we get started in all this mess? Let's first begin with a little history about yourself. I know you've probably said that every show you're on, but for our listeners that might not know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
You know, truth is that the side of me that led me to this type of research hasn't been covered a whole lot. And it's really quite a strange tale, honestly. I mean, my life is as weird as my research, so I'm as much a victim of the possibilities as anyone else. I've come up through, I grew up in your average neighborhood. My dad considered this. He soldered together the first color television on our block. So this is kind of my generation, you know, I'm the first television generation. He built our first computer and it was as big as the wall, right? So I've come into this world, into the computer generation, into the understandings, getting my mind blown left and right. And I really am a person that decided to, well, not join in with the real world, honestly. After college, I pretty much just became, or after high school, I should say, I just became a beach bum. I started traveling around. But what occurred to me was that I was finding mystical experiences, very much like what you're talking about with Jim Morrison there in your intro, constantly. And I mean, there was a lot of mushrooms, there was a lot of psychedelic experiences, and there was a lot of things that guided me down a path that showed me a miraculous hand in my existence. And I don't think a whole lot of people get that perspective, because how many people actually put their lives in God's hands?
Exactly.
And so when I come to you first and foremost as one that has tossed himself out to the universe. I I just wandered. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know anything about the world. I didn't know anything about anybody. And I wandered this earth. And for the last 20 years, that's what I've done. I've lived in vehicles left and right. I've lived in school buses recently. And all along the way, I was learning, and things were coming to me, and people were coming in my path. So this guided me forth to finally being at a conference with an ex-Bilderberger, one that said he was Jimmy Carter's financial advisor. His name was George Green. And I'm in a mall in Austin, Texas that some homeless guy had led me to. I still give the Zoe Award. Now, Zoe was a person that stepped into my life and just handed me directions to a mall, which changed my life. And I love to give awards out to people that don't know they're just handing someone their destiny. And Zoe, I love you, man. I just gotta say that. I just found out he's still out there. He's still listening, so it's awesome. Anyway, do you mind that I give you this whole...
No, not at all.
All right. Because to me, it's very important. To me, it's important that I've been raised up through friendship. I've had to rely on people for my existence. I had no jobs. I haven't worked since 1999. Prior to that, I really didn't have any jobs before that. I tried that world. I really did. But my world became more miraculous, and my life guided me from one event to the next, and I found myself doing all the amazing things that everyone wished they were doing, but were waiting for enough money to do. Here I was doing it with nothing. And this led me to this meeting at George Green at the mall, and at this time I had gathered so much knowledge about ancient astronauts, civilizations, and I'd been through college already at this point and been actually, I've been, I don't want to say I've been abducted, but when I finished college in 1993, I stepped out to the beach for spring break. I was at Daytona Beach. And as my friend and I decided we'd go hang out at the beach for a minute before we joined the party for spring break. And as we were down on the beach at nighttime, a large rectangular craft was hovering out over the night sky of Daytona Beach. And it was really strange. It looked like 4 squares just hanging together that were luminescent and kind of radiating. And we stood there pointing at it. And I remember, the curious thing is I don't remember the craft or anything moving, but I do remember my finger following it. And we jumped down from the lifeguard stand. We were just ecstatic and wanted to go share this information with anyone that we could possibly find. And we got to the main strip of Daytona Beach, and there was not a single soul. There were no people left. They were all gone. We're freaking out. We're thinking, oh my God, are we the last people on planet Earth? We thought we had entered in some Twilight Zone episode.
Yes, that's what I was just thinking, the Twilight Zone.
I'm keeping my glasses safe and secure, right? I'm telling you the utmost truth here. And my friend, we've talked about it, and it's just, this is what occurred. So there were no one. So we decided to just keep walking down and see if we could go to the bar that we were going to head for spring break. And we finally ran into some cats walking down the street and asked them the time. And at this point, it was 4:30 in the morning. The party was over. Everybody had gone home. We had missed it. And for us, it was a matter of 10 minutes. So after that point was when I started to, predict things.
You got to download, I think.
I wonder a lot, I really do. I wonder a lot. See, my family connections, my dad was a Freemason, worshipful master, rose through the ranks, was in the Navy and the Air Force. He was in Project Blue Book, chasing flying saucers. He was on the first killer submarine with Jimmy Carter. And
I was in Project Blue Book?
My dad was in Project Blue Book, yeah.
I didn't know that.
And all he ever left me with was, flying saucers are real. And I've never been able to, he died, so I've never been able to question him any further. strangely, I mean, another strange part of my tale was that he died on the day I was supposed to go interview him for my new TV show, which I got by going to this mall and meeting George Green. But prior to all of that, I had this UFO experience, and I don't know if it's related, but the timing began right about then that I began getting more involved in anarchy, maybe opposition, doing protests, going out, you know, and instead of the festivals, I was hitting, the IMF WTO protests. And I was taking my knowledge and kind of throwing it out there into the streets and rolling around with that. My first radio interview was actually in 93 in Washington, D.C., or 96 at the IMF. Yeah. So this is all the weirdness that has led me to start to, to have the open possibilities of what is possible on planet Earth, but also to have a somewhat stable view of what's going on, because I don't think my dad was a Satanist. I look at someone like, when people openly discuss secret societies and Freemasonry, it usually comes from a Christian bent. So for me, you've got one that's, okay, I know that they're still like not reptilians, and I've just been exploring ever since then. And I've been to every Mason temple almost on the planet. I've been all around investigating people and meeting the strangest folks you could ever meet. And that's how we ended up making the friendship agenda.
Well, Freeman, I don't like to restrain guests. I want you to sing it the way you want to sing it. And I don't really interrupt much unless I have a question. So feel free to say whatever you'd like to say. And I don't think you're strange at all for having a UFO experience, because I've had several that I've drawn and documented. And I honestly got tired of drawing them. I saw them too much. At times, I can go outside on a clear night and just think of one, and one can show up,
Right.
But they're always just hovering like 20, 30,000 feet in the sky. I can't see them unless you have binoculars or a telescope. But I know that they visited me as well, because I've had the light, the paralysis, et cetera, like everyone else. So this is a very open-minded audience. You don't have to be...
All right. Well, my story goes back a bit further with you were just reminding me back to when I was 10 in 1977, right? And give you my date in my life. But just about 6 months before Star Wars came out, I was in school and I had drawn this artwork for class, and I won the art contest there. And in this picture, which I show in my film called Columbia, the Illuminati Goddess, and I also highlight it in many of my lectures on freemantv.com. You can see all the... So I drew this artwork, and in it I had the 4 space shuttles. And I grew up in Orlando. I used to watch all the rocket launches when I was a kid. My first memory actually is of the landing on the moon. And so I'm also, this generation of space age. And we watched the Challenger explode from my backyard and things like that.
Wow.
And the space shuttle took out our garage door once with a sonic boom. NASA had to pay to repair our garage door. All right. So when I drew this picture at 10, I was already fascinated with the space program and with everything. And I drew these 4 space shuttles. Now realize that the space shuttle titles are the Columbia. That's the Illuminati goddess that I've done this film on. And as far as I know, I'm the only one that talks about her, and have been for years. So the Columbia Endeavor for the Discovery of Atlantis. These are the titles of our space shuttle program. And of course, we could get deeper into the NASA occult connections, but I just wanted to lay that out as I'm going over this image.
Now,
so
let
here
me
I have
ask
these.
you this one thing, Freeman. Is there a picture of this on your website so the listeners can maybe go check it out?
Yeah, it's under
Because
Sorcerer.
I've seen the picture, but they might not have in it, and I think it's important to look at it.
Yeah, I agree. I'd hope that you and I don't have it like full form on my website, and I should. But under Sorcerers of Atlantis, you click on there, and there you'll see all my artwork. And what you'll see is Dogon and the fish people. Because what occurred was I had drawn these space shuttles, and I'd drawn flames down the sides of them and everything else, making them really cool. But then I wanted to put some sort of symbol on them.
And that's at freemantv.com for everyone who's listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Go to freemantv.com and go to Sorcerers of Atlantis. Then in that image search, you'll have a bunch of images there of the artworks that I've done. What these are conspiracy artworks that highlight. There's a mystery in each art that is somewhat identified by its name and then by what's in the artwork. So they're all mysteries that I unfold in my lectures. But there's one there where you'll see a Dogon priest. He's an African priest from Mali, Africa. You'll see a fish man waving with the sun rising behind him. And next to that sun is a spaceship, or a flying saucer, if you will. We'll get to that in a second. And then my artwork is there. And so it's all combined into one image with the fish man. And it's titled Dogon and the Fish People. And I just see that I misspelt Dogon in my titling.
That's okay.
Okay, so I drew this picture. I wanted it to have really cool art, and so I went to make this really cool symbol on it, and I drew this curved line and a straight line on it like a radar dish cut in half. And I'm just looking at it as a kid, and I remember so specifically looking at that going, why did I put that? That's not cool. But then I went ahead and I put it on each of the space shuttles anyway. I had done it, so let's go for it, right?
It's sort of like an angled sine wave with like a straight line through it.
You know, just a C, like, with a straight line.
Oh, okay.
The rest of the picture, I ended up drawing what I thought was a spiral galaxy in the center, and then a winged serpent on the other side. And I never thought anything of it. I liked it, and I won the first prize and everything with it, but I didn't, think much of it. Now, in my crazy travels and my lifestyle and everything else, I have lost everything I've ever owned. I have had roommates move out with everything I owned right from the beginning, and I lost all that, but I still had that picture. And 18 years later, I pick up the book, The Sirius Mystery. It's a book by Robert K. Temple. Now, Isaac Asimov, reputed to be the smartest man to have lived, said that the greatest thing about the Sirius Mystery is there's not a single mistake in it. It is so perfectly written. Now, the Sirius Mystery by Robert Temple is a discussion, an expose on the Dogon tribe of Mali, Africa, who got their entire mystical belief systems from fish people that came from Sirius. As I read this, I have been one that has been tracking the merfolk of Atlantis, the fish people. As David Icke went for the reptiles, I was always after the merfolk because I found them everywhere I was looking. Within the history of the world, you would find them as some of the main players. Say you looked into Semiramis with Nimrod and the creation of Babylon. You're back to fish people. When you look to the Atlanteans and the Atlantis connections, which all of the secret societies that I'm researching firmly believe in, So the merfolk became an obsession for me. Well, lo and behold, now I'm looking at this Dogon tribe and their belief in these fish beings that came from Sirius that were teaching them their sacred mysteries. And they had given the Dogon a symbol for Sirius, for their star. Sirius is a binary and possibly trinary star system called the Dog Star. In Freemasonry, it's also, in Egypt it's worshipped. In Freemasonry, it's worshipped. In Rosicrucianism, in almost every secret society, they worship, and also cultures worship Sirius. Well, lo and behold, I looked at this symbol that the Nomos, the fish beings, had given to the Dogon for their star Sirius, and it is the exact symbol that I am saying that I had drawn on these space shuttle images.
As a 10-year-old.
As a 10-year-old. 18 years later, I've got the book in my hand, and I'm looking, and I'm going, oh, my God. And I ran and grabbed the image, and like I say, it's the only thing I have left from the time I was 10, and I'm just flabbergasted. Well, it gets a little weirder. So I'm sitting there going, oh, my God. All right. And the picture of Sirius and Alpha Draconis, a global war between these two races from these distant stars, starts to form in my knowledge, reading things like Zecharia Sitchin or getting into exopolitics and things of this nature. And I'm starting to see this puzzle piece come together. Well, all of a sudden they have, it was 1996, I believe, that the Tether experiment from NASA, they sent a space shuttle up into the atmosphere to drag a long tether, a long line, into the atmosphere to see what kind of energy they could generate. Now, the story goes that it generated so much electricity that it actually severed itself from the Columbia space shuttle and floated off. And this is what is known as the tether experiment and STS-75. This tether floated, and now this tether was 14 miles long. And it began floating off into space, and it was lit up. Well, the camera was a infrared camera, so it looked like it was lit up like a fluorescent light bulb floating off into space. And the astronauts aboard the space shuttle are all watching this. And what you can see is that all of a sudden, all these craft that look like little Pac-Men start going by, and there's multitudes of them.
That's exactly what I call them, Freeman. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, they got that little notch in them. Well, lo and behold, if in my artwork, what I didn't realize right in the center of the thing that I thought was a spiral galaxy was that exact depiction of that craft. With the notch, with the spirals, I had it all there. Now, I drew the picture in 77. The Columbia shuttle was 1996.
Do you think they are negative energy or good energy? Because I have a friend who doesn't think that kind of craft is very nice.
Well, we start getting to the historical perspective of this thing. Now, realize that the queen is symbolized by the reptile. In America, we have all the merfolk symbolism. Our goddess Columbia. I have a whole film about it related to this. Or in a better standing, if you look at the city of London and the city of Rome, you'll realize that the Pope wears the Dagon hat. Now, that's not to be confused with the Dogon, but it's a curious connection. Dagon was a biblical fish god, right? So it's not like you can't find this stuff in the Bible, right? The fish people are there. They're in our story.
Many clues are hidden in the Bible.
Them.
Right.
So here is the Pope standing in his Dagon hat, which is the cult of the fish people, and he's wearing often a shell on his chest. I have these artworks on my site. You can see it. So you've got the Queen, the city of London, first city center power empire, and you've got Rome, really the first city center power, and you've got again the reptilian and fish being connections. I went to the Philosophical Research Society, a guy Manly P. Hall, who wrote The Secret Destiny of America and The Secret Teachings of All Ages and was one of the great mystical gurus of Freemasonry. And as I walked through his library doors, which are the background to FreemanTV.com, those two wooden statue or carvings that you see on my website, one's a fish man holding a penis, and the other is a reptilian holding a pine cone, or the pineal gland. And these are the two major players in this whole story, is the semen and the pineal gland. Okay, for them, this was the sign of Confucius versus Aristotle, the idea of emotion versus intellect. And so this is the combining forces that you see on Manly P. Hall's doors. But as you start to track the story back, and if you believe in the exopolitical story, which just kind of shocked me because it correlated with everything I was finding. So here I was digging into these ideas. Now, I still had the winged serpent on my artwork, and I didn't have any idea what to think about that. And, I was deep into the fish people as David Icke was into the reptiles by the time I ran into David Icke. So. Then I'm going, whoa, wait, okay, here we got Alpha Draconis, we got reptilians, we got another story. Well, lo and behold, if exopolitics didn't come along and then start to string this whole thing together. And you find that, according to exopolitical studies, now this is research done by gathering information from contactees or, even hopefully first-hand witnesses, people that are military and things. And anyway, they gathered together a history and a tale that went along with exopolitics or extraterrestrial politics. And they found that there was a group from Sirius that were the merfolk and the group from Alpha Draconis that were the reptilians, and that they had formed a union to unite over planet Earth, which had all the resources that they needed. And so, according to this kind of mindset, you would say that they instituted the idea of the divine right to rule, because they came down as these beings that were divine. And then they also instituted the concept of marrying into kingdoms, because that was their design to unite their two forces. Because according to exopolitics, the Syrians had high technological prowess, and the reptilians, who no one knows where they came from, they seem to have come out of another dimension, have just ultimate strength and power, that military might. And these two forces could never defeat one another, so they unified and to control over planet Earth. Now, this is the exopolitical story. At the same time, when you start looking at the symbolic gestures of the Queen and the Pope with their merfolk and reptiles, and then Manly P. Hall, and then this whole story, and then my artwork, it all starts to form a big puzzle piece to how we ended up with the civilization we have.
It sure does. Why don't we explain to the audience a little bit of the history of our hocus pocus that has been brought over humanity. What is the OTO? Can you explain that to the audience?
Seriously, the UFO world and the occult world run hand in hand. And so realize that Crowley was opening portals through ritual magic, Aleister Crowley, doing ritual magic of often Kabbalistic, which was Hebrew mysticism, performing these rites and rituals that were supposed to invoke these entities either into your soul or out into the world. And this ran hand in hand with the flaps that came with the flying saucers. So Crowley died like 6 months after Roswell, maybe less, maybe like 4 months. And the concept of the gray and this coming out, Crowley had been in contact with a being known as Lam, who looks just like what we depict as a gray. So prior to ufology, we had the occult, and we had communication with extra-dimensional beings. So when we go to the Nazis, we go back to their practices and their belief systems. Now, they were founded on the belief of Atlantis. The Thule Society came together. They were the Germanic historical group that used psychic means of finding their past and had channeled entities that convinced them that Atlantis was real, that a group of supreme beings exists within Hyperborea, which was basically the inner Earth, and had a capital called Ultima Thule, where they controlled all of Earth. And these Nazis were doing ritual magic in order to make communication with these beings so that they could develop higher technologies such as rocketry and jet engines, but then also a thing that was known as the bell. And the bell is Die Glock is what it was in German. It was a large bell-shaped device that had counter-rotating liquid metals like mercury inside. And this was supposed to open a portal to the other side. Because just like Hellboy, the goal had always been to bring the occult into the technology. And everything that you've got in your technological world, the reason you've got a bitten apple on your Macintosh, everything that has been brought into our technological world has come through these occult rituals. The television was done by the Golden Dawn Society, crooks came up with a device, the cathode ray tube, for the attempt to make transmissions to the other side. That was the purpose of a television. As you go to rocketry, you've got Jack Parsons and Werner von Braun. These guys were high occultists doing dark black magic rituals to the god Pan, and many other situations and forms. And Werner von Braun then, of course, came over and joined Disney and began in the propaganda. We could get to that. All of this to lead to the OTO because the Nazis, in their communications with these extra-dimensional beings, had come up with Die Glock, the Bell Project, which opened portals to the other dimension. This happened to be the exact same technologies that was discovered in those craft that were filmed by the Columbia Space Shuttle in the tether experiment. You can see the counter-rotating spirals. In my artwork, I have the counter-rotating spirals in the exact same way. David Sereda, the NASA scientist who looked deeper into the tether experiment, was the one who came up with hyperdimensional physics using the counter-rotating spirals he was seeing in these craft. Paul Lafley, the Twin Tower architect, the man who told me the bin Ladens asked him where to put the demolition charges when he was drawing out the blueprints for the Twin Towers, Paul Lafley, He has a whole design and a whole science on these counter-rotating spirals, right? And then you can go to the 19.5 of Richard Hoagland, and all of this just all comes together, right? And this Glock program that was opening portals to the other dimensions. Well, this ritual magic of the Nazis has formed its way into the Ordo Templi Orientis, and very much they are hand in hand. So the new Nazi occult ring of the Thule Society is now the Ordo Templi Orientis, but it's more especially the Gnostic Catholic Church, which is at the top of the OTO. The OTO was a magical order that was forming itself, but until Crowley, who was a member of the Golden Dawn, same people that brought you television, broke out and came to the OTO. And he began channeling entities, began opening portals using the ritual magic, and started divulging different secrets that he didn't even realize he was giving away. And they contacted him and said, "Why are you giving away our greatest secrets?" And that's how he propelled himself up through the OTO and became their master. And at that point, he was with his wife in Egypt, and they channeled an entity known as Owas. And at this point, awakened the age of Horus, which is the aeon that he says that we are in now. And there's a lot of evidence, and my whole talk on aliens from hell has to do with the very connections of that we are in this age of Horus that Crowley had prophesied, or really his wife, channeling Horus at the Great Pyramids. They are now the new Illuminati. The OTO, when people are looking out and calling Illuminati symbols, and they're saying, look, she's putting up that triangle hand sign, or the 666, or any of this, actually all goes back to the magical practices of the Ordo Templi Orientis. And you're basically seeing live performance rituals happening before you with celebrities using this magic, which is based on sex magic. It's based on menstrual blood and semen, and occasionally excrement, and is actually when you get down to Crowley's practices, it's trauma-based mind control is what it is. But it opens you to these otherworldly beings.
Yes, I've interviewed Leo Zagami, and he was very honest. He admitted that after, that he did partake in many rituals, and I thought it was interesting that he said after these rituals took place, he actually needed exorcisms after each one.
Yeah, Crowley was real sloppy in closing his magic circles, and often left things in disarray, like his land in the Loch Ness. You gotta you gotta bind those spirits again once you've opened them and utilize them.
Freeman, in your opinion, what are those portal spirals that we're seeing in the sky?
Well, that was what kind of spurred me to the idea of what was going on with the Norway spiral. So we had some ideas of what was going on with these liquid metals, and the Bell project that said that it basically went hyperdimensional. If you believe the stories, it disappeared and showed up, I believe, in Pennsylvania, from Nazi Germany. And so as I started to watch the technological rise of this whole situation, we're dealing with the ideas of electromagnetic frequencies. Now, when you are studying magic, you'll find that magnets and magic go hand in hand, and the electromagnetic spectrum is one that they've always manipulated. That's just what we call the ether these days, right? So devices such as HARP, or ionospheric heaters, that have the ability to have this massive antenna array that causes major effects on the ionosphere using ultra low radio frequency waves, is manipulating this electromagnetic spectrum. Right now we're dealing with the Grid X drill going on, where they're pretending a terrorist organization has detonated an EMP over our nation. And, if a total blackout would occur, and they're practicing that right now at this moment. As I began watching this, and I have a section on my website called the Space War News, and I've been tracking incoming strange meteors causing earthquakes and sonic booms long before the one that hit Russia. For years and years I've been tracking these things up until the point where they classified them as secret. But I have been tracking all of the space war news. From the moment Barack Obama said, I will not weaponize space, I started outlining, every moment he did. There's certain things like the International Space Station and the X-37B, which is our super secret space shuttle, and I track all the launches. So I get a report saying that there's a launch going off at Wallops Flight Facility. This is over in Virginia. It's called Mars, and this is where we launch many rockets. They were launching one that was called the Cloud of Care, and it was called the Charged Aerosol Release Experiment. And they were launching this rocket up to release this aluminum oxide cloud into the upper atmosphere somewhere around 183 miles, which is the exact height that the International Space Station is at. And they released this aluminum oxide cloud, and it looked like a giant portal had opened up in space, a crazy opening. Now, this is not the Norway spiral. This is prior to the Norway spiral. And this big opening in the sky opens up. And, okay, you could have watched the launch live on FreemanTV.com, because I like to put those launches, the NASA live feeds and stuff. I put that all in my Space War News, so you can, if we're bombing the moon, you can watch it on my website. But so you could watch this Cloud of Care launch on my website. I'll wrap this up real quick. The news reported, oh my God, a giant portal opened up in space. We don't know what's going on. None of our experts know what's going on. They interviewed people at the scene, and they were like, it looked like the sky ate itself, and it might have been aliens. And they played it all off like it was an alien invasion, which I thought was really interesting propaganda, being that, you could have watched the launch live on my site. Why didn't they know what was going on? And then the Norway spiral occurred. So Barack Obama, suddenly winning the Nobel Peace Prize, right, goes to Norway in the morning of his arrival. Giant portal, looks like somebody photoshopped the sky, forms itself in the sky over the ISCAT antenna array. Now, ISCAT is Norway's HARP, their ionospheric heater. ISCAT was used to send a Doritos commercial to Ursa Major, the distant star. So this is what this technology can do. They use the Deep Space Guide antenna array in America at Cape Canaveral to send The Day the Earth Stood Still, that movie with Keanu Reeves, to Alpha Centauri. So this is what these devices are capable of. Transmission of information. It took 4 years for The Day the Earth Stood Still to be simulcast in the studio or in the theaters while it was being sent to Alpha Centauri. Now, Alpha Centauri, according to extraterrestrial philosophy or belief systems, is the closest inhabited star system. And the message inside The Day the Earth Stood Still is humans are the worst beasts on the planet. You better send a big-ass robot that will turn into nanotechnology and kill everybody, or else we're just going to kill ourselves. That's the message inside of The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Wow.
Unless you know Klaatu, Varata, Niktu, the robot's going to destroy your world and all the humans on it, right? And that's because we're so awful that we need that. So we sent that movie, of all the movies in the friggin' planet, we sent The Day the Earth Stood Still with Keanu Reeves to Alpha Centauri, and it arrived in their star system on December 21st, 2012. I'm not kidding.
That's amazing.
So all of a sudden, the Norway spiral thing occurs. Everybody's tripping out. Oh my God, are aliens contacting the president while he's going to receive his Nobel Peace Prize? What is going on with this thing? No one knew. And there were reports of a rocket launch out of a submarine in the White Sea right there next to the ISCAT antenna array, but the Russians denied anything. They said that they had not done this. The 2 days later, they announced, oh, actually, yeah, we did. We launched a rocket, but we didn't make that spiral, right? Well, what I believe occurred, because I had witnessed numerous spirals to this point. This was not my first. I tracked many on the website already. It was that this rocket launched out of that submarine. It emitted an aluminum oxide cloud. You can tell it's that because it's blue. And it was then pulsed with the ISCAT antenna array. And I believe that this technology is an attempt at wormhole technology, an attempt at this transmission into the other dimensions. Because at the same time, CERN was at full potential. And CERN has the capability of punching a hole into the other dimension, and they have the technology to see into the other side.
All the truth is truly connected, is it not? Mm-hmm. In some way or another. Now, I know you also speak about bombing on the moon.
Yeah, why did we bomb the moon? The Japanese had already crashed a satellite into the moon. There was no need for that. It was I don't remember the exact price of that rocket now. 50 million, a billion, I don't remember. Expensive, just to go shoot it into the moon. So they said they were off to find water on the moon. But India had already announced with their Chandrayaan-1 satellite that they had found water on the moon 2 months before the moon bombing occurred. And that was the trying to remember the name of the satellite that crashed into the moon. I can't think of it right now, but it's on my website.
I can't remember. Sorry.
Yeah, irrelevant, really. It was the moon bombing. It'll probably pop into my head in a second, but they launched this rocket to the moon to crash a satellite into the surface of the moon, but this had already been done by Japan, and water had already been determined by India, so it was an unnecessary program. But what we found was that striking the moon causes it to ring out like a gong. And so the early NASA astronauts had announced when the landing or the launching gear of their rocket landed back on the moon, it rang out for hours like a gong. And this was also noted by the first astronauts to land on the moon. So the thing was that there's like on Jurassic Park, where they struck the ground with a large instrument, and then were able to use tomography, computer-generated imagery, to see the dinosaur before digging, right? Do you remember this? Mm-hmm. He's teaching the children about dinosaurs and getting all creepy on that kid. And they strike the earth and they can see inside of it. Well, lo and behold, HARP actually has the ability to tomography. It is capable of tomography, and it's capable of reaching the moon. Just recently, they announced the closure of HARP. It's really now only going straight military projects. It's no longer an open science project. And they announced when they were closing HARP some of the things that they had done with it, and one was to send these ultra-low frequencies to the moon. So when this probe crashed into the moon, it rang out like a gong. They were able to focus HARP onto it and therefore get an inner structure of the moon and get a map of what it looks like inside. Because there's a lot of curious things about our moon. Right? Now, just to add another one to this very same thing, another moon that has always been on my radar is Phobos, which is the moon of Mars. Now, Phobos and Deimos, they mean fear and panic. And they suddenly arrived at the Martian orbit in 1877. No one had ever reported ever seeing moons of Mars until that time, even though we had telescopes for 100 years or more. So all of a sudden in 1877, everyone saw moons of Mars. All of a sudden they were there. There was fear and panic orbiting the Martian. And we sent a probe up there. I believe it was called Marsus. And it was to go and get our closest view of Phobos possible. Now, the reason Phobos had come on my radar so many times was because of how many probes Russia and America have sent to Phobos that suddenly vanish. And the Phobos 2, I believe that was, Phobos 2 of the Russians, when it vanished, it took a picture of a 14-mile-long cigar-shaped craft, which Maria Povovich of the Russian Space Agency went around showing everyone this picture, saying, look. And, of course, it just got washed over. But so Phobos, we then sent this recent probe, and they announced to us that they were not going to be able to show us the monolith on Phobos. All right? And the monolith on Phobos was made popular by Buzz Aldrin, who is a 33rd degree Freemason that brought the Freemason flag and established Tranquility Lodge, a Freemason lodge, on the moon.
Yeah.
Buzz Aldrin went on Dancing with the Stars. He went on Worldwide Wrestling. He went on all these different shows announcing that there was this monolith on Martian moon Phobos that was either placed there by aliens or God. And that's what he said.
That's what he said.
Here we have this probe heading towards the Martian moon Phobos, and they tell us that they have to go to silent running in order to image the inside of Phobos. Just as I'm saying they did with the moon bombing, they were trying to do the same with Phobos, and they said they had to go into silent running like a submarine in wartime to go and get these sensor readings, but they could not take images because the clicking of the lens or whatever, the excuse they were trying to give us, wouldn't allow for it. It would throw the sensors off, and so they announced that we would not be able to actually view the monolith on Mars. And this was all straight around the Martian moon Phobos. This was all straight news.
Do you think that the chemtrails work in unison with HAARP?
You know, I've got the worst backache today because of those stupid chemtrails. How many years I've been talking about those things? You know, by the time I got Scott Stevens, the guy who authors Weather Wars, on the Freeman perspective, and that was in 2006, he was already sick of talking about it. He was like, you know, that's 2006. I have him on the show. He's like, nah, I don't want to talk about chemtrails anymore. I've learned this new alien philosophy through this book, and it was the book that George Green was giving out that was given by the Plagiarians that were meeting Billy Meyer in Switzerland. The UFOs that were visiting Billy Meyer published a book. The Palladians published a book through George Green, that Bilderberger I was telling you about that caused me to be on TV. He's publishing their books, and it was that book. But so, you know, all these weird little connections. So Scott Stevens, who was, you know, the big go-to guy on chemtrails, the weatherman who came forward, right, was suddenly spouting off alien philosophy to me on my show, and I'm just freaking out. Anyway, I had Isaac Bonowitz on my show, and he is the only, first ever, and I guess only academically accredited magician, because magic has always been my quest to understand what the heck. You know, I know all of our leaders are off doing rituals, and that there's, you know, I've witnessed things. This is all just very strange, and I want to understand it. Well, Isaac Bonowitz actually defined magic to the point that he proved a thesis at Berkeley University and came out with a degree in magic.
That's interesting that you say that, Freeman, because a friend of mine who is very much into magic and the occult, and he's a very in tune person, he says that there's a secret teaching called Bono. It's spelled B-O-U-N-O, I believe. And it's only talked about among small circles, and you can't find much information on it. So when I went to Google looking for information on it, all I could come up with was a bunch of psychic websites. They're like, you know, like a John Bono, you know, they all changed their last name to Bono, it seems like. And from what my friend told me, that was the definition of a true psychic warrior. Interesting synchronicity there.
And that really was what Bonowitz's book was all about. And I had the last interview with Isaac Bonowitz before he died. And I kind of grilled him on chemtrails and on HAARP, which he wasn't too happy about, because he's the high arch druid. He was, you know, this guy who had, you know, defined magic, and it was all defined in the psychic and electromagnetic spectrums. So very much like what you're talking about with the Bono, it was all really to do with psi powers. And he designed a psychic machine. Now this thesis of his came out 25 years before HAARP was ever created, and it describes HAARP to a T. It describes the antenna arrays. It describes computer transmissions between it. It describes its methods of being able to transmit thoughts and receive thoughts of its own. This, you know, I really grilled him on, because I thought, you know, this is where my story meets, the occult meets the technological and how it all comes together. So there's that side of HAARP, the ideas of the magical practices. But the chemtrails themselves, when they began, that stuff was falling straight down to the ground, and you would see it like a spiderweb substance all over the lawn, and if you touched it, you got flu-like symptoms. Now, at the time, the news announced that there was a flu-like symptom epidemic. Now, what the heck is that?
Isn't that convenient?
Yeah, a flu-like symptom epidemic. A symptom epidemic. And, no one's knowing anything. Everybody's thinking they have the flu. Everybody's dealing with it as a virus. Well, what it was that this was barium coming down out of the sky and landing in our yards. And then animals and us and anything that touched it developed flu-like symptoms.
I saw that. It was like a gooey type, substance.
Yeah. Sometimes it came down gooey. Sometimes it came down as fibers. It was, they were working out their different chemical connections in all of this. And I have been at the forefront of the renegade anarchists, or whatever you want to call it, Discordians, doing things such as rainbow gatherings and festivals and dead tours and things of that nature. And Rainbow was really at my heart. And they were a group that would gather together in the National Forest every 4th of July to celebrate life and to stand up for human rights as far as owning our own land, as the national lands were supposed to be ours. Well, the Rainbow Gathering, being such a interesting little collective, has its own federal force. It has its own task force, its own agents, and they build a little town outside of the Rainbow Gathering with all their little white vehicles and such, and come and patrol. Well, so we're like this experimental group that they can use. And there's been no doubts that I have been on a mountaintop in 95-degree weather and been hit with a blizzard. This has happened to me twice. 2 different Rainbow Gatherings where we were pinned down on the mountain for a week without being able to leave, move, get food, water, anything. Just stuck there. It was a trip. And, we're talking about the 4th of July in Utah, pinned down by a blizzard. I'm not lying. This has happened. There's plenty of witnesses. We were all, 30,000 of us, or probably at that point about 3,000 to 5,000, because by the 4th of July it grows. And it just went away at the 4th of July. It's just all of a sudden back to 90 degrees again. And it was crazy. So these are the type of things that they're capable of doing with these type of, with the combination of chemtrails and frequencies from HAARP. It can also be used as a meteor deflection shield. It can be used as a solar shield. It can be used to manipulate our own emotions. And so what happens is that barium, one of the main ingredients of chemtrails, gets embedded in your system and won't leave, causes these flu-like symptoms, these aching joints. When you see heavy chemtrail days and you reach up to grab something, often a muscle will pull, or, it makes your body very sensitive. Well, barium actually shows up on what's known as the X-band radar. And you'll start hearing about this in certain catastrophes, like I think Hawaii, they used it, the X-band radar, to start searching for people. The X-band radar is a radar that's over the horizon radar that can also determine barium in a system. So barium is what you drink when you go in for, I believe, an MRI or an imaging at the doctor. You drink that.
CAT scan.
You drink the radioactive stuff, which is barium. And that's
where you get it injected.
Yeah. And then your whole insides light up, right?
Yeah.
Well, in the same way, us breathing in the barium, we are now all visible to the X-band radar, which they moved during Katrina to the HAARP facility. So right as the X-band radar headed out of Texas to go to Alaska, it had to go all the way down around South America. It was set on top of a oil rig. and it had to go all the way down around South America. It took a long time for it to get there. But right as it was leaving out of Texas, that's when it seemingly some ionospheric heater turned Katrina, steered the storm. We saw heat rays hitting into this storm, and most believe that this was actually Sura, which was the ionospheric heater of Russia. We're not the only one with one. There's ISCAT, there's Sura. I know China has one, and then there's the VLF array of Boeing in Australia. We've got the HARP facility here. We've got mini HARPs. This is all over the globe. The other ingredient was aluminum, which makes you an antenna for the electromagnetic frequencies of HARP. So the barium makes you show up on the radar. The aluminum makes you an antenna. And this is how these two things come together to manipulate us.
All right. You're doing an excellent job. Thank you very much for being here, Freeman. We are going to go to our break, but before we do, I would like to thank a handful of people who help out Truth Connections. On a previous broadcast, I put out a call for editing help. Out of thousands of listeners, Neil Brubaker was the only one who responded. Because let's face it, not many people want to work for free. And I'm pleased to say that I'm extremely happy about him joining us, because with those odds against us, we found one heck of a kind and talented audio technician. And I, quite frankly, wouldn't want anybody else. He's a keeper. I'd also like to thank a few others that I've thanked before and deserve a shout-out from time to time, and they are Ruth Ramos D. Smith for helping with our website, James Swagger for helping out with voiceovers and for generally being there for me whenever I need him, Roger Silver for our show bumpers at Solid Silver Sounds, Thomas Voot for all of our cool intros, and Live Mike for promo commercials, and EI Web Design for hosting our website. And last but not least, my past partner for the show, Tamara Natividad, for aiding in Truth Connections' transition, because too often than not, when partners in radio part ways, things can get ugly, and that's just not the case with Tamara. She is as loyal as they come and has a great work ethic, and will always be a co-founder of Truth Connections Radio. Moving on, tonight's break song is by Elias Clay, and it's featuring Steve Grant. More of their music can be found at dirtymics.com. That's DURTY mics.com or realstevegrant.com. Enjoy their song called Empire. Fits perfectly with the show. We'll see you back in a few.
This is Aldous Huxley, a man haunted by a vision of hell on earth. A searing social critic, Mr. Huxley, 27 years ago, wrote Brave New World, a novel that predicted that someday the entire world would live under a frightful dictatorship. You'll find out why in a moment.
Welcome to the new age of renegade machines, the child of the new world of fascist regimes. Remnants of the Third Reich lurk behind the scenes, training all the puppets and then pulling on their strings. It's a dark, dark circus with a serpent man a king, feeding on the energy of creatures in the kingdom, on the people and the cattle and the fishes and the sheep. Daily mass genocide while most of the people sleep. It's a cold-blooded, murderous, money-hungry beast, creeping through the tapestry of everything we see, from the schools to the hospitals, the malls and the screens, at the supermarket, on the covers of the magazines, and the EMFs every day raining on our brains, and the GMOs tailored to affect our DNA, and the DSM criteria to diagnose your state, and the drugs and the water meant to keep us all sedated. The well-planned kill man, never gonna give a damn, murder off a whole race quick just to claim land. No shame, all game, propaganda campaign, tricking you to pick a side when it's all the same thing. Red team, blue team, ready, set, go. Behind the scenes, both the run of the same control. Big money, blood money, brotherhood ties, an empire built upon lies. Never rising from the ashes to cut through the facades, never bowing down to the self-appointed gods. Step into their armies against all odds, and the tidal wave of revolution will not be stopped. It's a preordained sure thing happening right now, coming from the kingdom and the kingdom's coming down. It's about time, wake minds, never gonna take mine. All about peace, but make no mistake, when assaulted by something else, don't hesitate to act and defend myself. I don't wait for any signal except inside me, and I'm grateful that I listen to these. Cause it's a well-planned kill man, never gonna give a damn, murder off a whole race quick just to claim land. No shame, all game, propaganda campaign, tricking you to pick a side when it's all the same thing. Red team, blue team, ready, set, go. Behind the scenes,
funeral for you was made. This shit is logical, this shit ain't philosophical. 1936, these German kids were filling hospitals, while Hitler had these Nazis building Hannibals, pushing buttons, flicking their switches and flipping their modules.
Well-planned kill man, never gonna give a damn. Murder off a whole race quick just to claim land. No shame, old game, propaganda campaign, tricking you to pick a side when it's all the same thing. Red team, blue team, ready, set, go. Behind the scenes, both they're under the same control. Big money, blood money, brotherhood ties, an empire built upon lies, lies.
We are back with our very special guest, Mr. Freeman Fly, and it's been an interesting show so far. I just want to give a shout out to the listeners because I didn't realize some people couldn't find the chat room. And if you would like to join chat room, you can go to express.paltalk.com and choose a nickname and join the chat room that way. Sorry that some of you are having trouble finding it. Freeman.
Yes.
Did we finish talking about chemtrails? Because I hated to cut you off. There's so much information.
Yeah, the one thing that I really tried to push on people back in the early days was to say that you're dealing with heavy metal poisoning and not a virus. And so a lot of people were looking to the wrong solutions. You needed to find things that would push heavy metals out of your system. And there's a few things like clay and I think selenium and things like that help with this. So, knowing the problem, and it was intriguing to watch it because, no one would believe this was going on. And that happens with a lot of what I talk about, I guess.
Yeah, I totally agree. As a matter of fact, I asked my doctor for a heavy metal poison test, and he goes, well, I can't give you that because insurance won't pay for it because I see no symptoms of it. So I want the test. You want blood work? You get it. Why can't I do this? But it's just I do agree with you. I think a lot of people are suffering from that these days.
Yeah, I ended up in the hospital myself after the Rainbow Gathering, where I believe that they were putting barium into the water supply. I developed blood poisoning and almost died at the gathering, was miraculously healed by faith healers and Reikiists and Golden Seal and Echinacea. And I mean, I was almost completely healed by the very next morning. They thought I was dead, and instead I was almost back in perfect health. But I had an aversion of going back anywhere near the water. This was in Missouri. But 2 weeks after the gathering, I was walking down the street, and my whole left side just went totally numb. And I called a nurse, ask a nurse or whatever to see what. And I'd had these symptoms now for a couple of weeks. And she's freaking out on me, says, get to the hospital, get to the hospital. And I'm like, it's been going on for a while now. I'm just trying to figure out what it might be. And so she rushes me, tells me in no uncertain terms that I'm about to die if I don't get there. So I actually go to the emergency room, which I never do. I don't go to doctors. I hate them. It's not my thing. But anyway, I went. And they tested everything, my heart and all this stuff. And they said, no, you're fine, you're fine. And I'm like, well, I'm not fine or I wouldn't be here. And they're like, well, there's nothing showing up. So I stopped another random doctor and said, look, tell me something. There's got to be something. And he says, well, all I can see here is that you're low on potassium. And that was a key symptom to barium poisoning. And so I had my answer right there.
Glad you're still with us.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I almost died so many times. We could have a whole show about that.
I bet. I can see I'm going to have you come back again because there's so much I want to ask you to pick your brain. It's difficult to pick which topic to go to next. But why don't we move to talking about the Egyptian symbology and cloning as far as, with Obama, your theories about that.
All right, let's just stick with Obama. I mean, the concept of being able to clone a mummy was something that popped up around 1985 because they did it. And it was reported in Nature magazine, it was reported in the New York Times that they had taken a cell from a mummified body and cloned it. And this was supposed to be impossible. There's no way that a viable DNA would survive all of that time. And it became this mystery. What did the ancient Egyptians know that we don't? That they're capable of mummifying a being and then saving a viable cell or many cells through this mummification process, which in the 21st century or the 20th century we were trying to do. I say we as the modern people, but they attempted to mummify Stalin, and he's rotting. We don't know the secrets that the ancient Egyptians knew. And so became a big mystery, but also it clued me into the fact that these pharaohs could come back. And this DNA that they found, that they cloned back in 85, came from the time period of King Akhenaten. And he's the most bizarre, unusual king of Egypt that ever existed, turned Egypt on its head, began the practices of monotheism, doing away with the multitude of gods, saying we worship the one God, the Aten, and kind of created a satanic character known as Apophis, the serpent deity of destruction. So it turns out that Akhenaten was far more important to everything than I could have possibly imagined. And as I've gone through all these different Masonic temples, as you'll get to see on my new TV show, and also the Rosicrucian temples, another magical order, as they all venerate Akhenaten. They all have rooms dedicated to Akhenaten. So imagine that all of your presidents have kneeled before an altar with the representation of Akhenaten staring down at them, and the son of the Aten, his god, Ra's, coming down as well. And you'll see all of this in my new TV show coming up on the People's Voice and many other wares. We're calling it Conspiracy Science Theater. And I tell you, I got so much unseen footage, I'm going to blow your minds, I promise.
Sounds awesome.
So here I was left in 1985 with the concept that pharaohs could come back. And on my third television show, when I began the Freeman Perspective back in 2005, I brought this all up. And the ancient astronauts, I did a show on each of the different things that I thought were going to be important in our future, and ancient astronauts was one of them. And I get into this concept. So I was already getting into it. This is, when W is in office. Now, I mean, there's a longer story. There's the idea that I followed this through the capping of the Great Pyramid ritual that happened with Y2K with Bill Clinton. I followed it through George W. Bush and his symbolism of W connecting to the fallen angels and how this all played out. And as I watched the political spectrum of them taking down the man, Bill Clinton, for an extramarital affair, and then forcing in the President W., I made a prediction, and I said the next president will not be an American citizen. And, of course, the next president was Barack Obama, and next thing you know, the whole birther movement's coming along, and they're saying he's not who he says he is, he's not from where he says he's from, he's got school records in Indonesia, his passport, his birth certificate's a total fraud. People like Donald Trump were coming forth in the birther movement, There were some big names coming out saying, show us this birth certificate. And it became a big deal. And I had predicted that. You can see that on my website. On my blog from 2005, you can see where I said this was going to happen. Well, what I didn't realize was that I was going to then start to try to prove to the world that the first family, not just Barack, but the entire first family, are actually clones from Akhenaten and his family.
Yes, you have some imagery on your website, and it's also on this artwork that we did for the show.
Right.
Comparisons.
Yeah, if you go to Is Obama a Clone on my website, on freemantv.com, you will see the image, you will see the article from Nature magazine, you'll see all the legislation on human cloning, you will see the organizations that were involved in congressional hearings on human cloning. And, we're talking about some strange cats here, too. Rael, back in 2000, speaking before Congress about human cloning, telling them that there's no way they're going to be able to stop it. And Rael is a contactee who met Yahweh on a mountain and wears the Star of David with a swastika as his logo, and he's building an embassy in Israel, or at least he wants to, for the Elohim, or these extraterrestrials, return, which he met on a flying saucer, right? Now, this is the guy who was up before Congress, along with Bridget Bousselet and Dr. Savros, to discuss the likelihood and the undoubted, by their standards, undoubted event of human cloning. At this time, Arnold Schwarzenegger and George W. Bush were having a cloning battle. You know, George Bush was bringing stem cell babies out on the stage while Arnold Schwarzenegger was making movies like The Sixth Day. And it was, you know, it was all right there, the whole thing. So I timed the release of my article on Obama being a clone with his release of stem cell research. Okay, so stem cell research has not been funded by federal grants. And so Barack Obama came forward and said, I am releasing all the restrictions on federal funding for stem cell research, but I will not stand for human cloning for reproduction. So what he's saying is it's okay for human cloning for experimentation, but human reproduction, no go. So he opened the door to human cloning and no one noticed. And you can watch this. I have a DVD called E.T. and the Transhumanist Agenda, and I have the speech there and everything. You know, I've been following this for so long now. It's all there. I have another series as well on my flash drive called The Obama Chronicles, where I outline all of this from the day Obama was inaugurated. Now, that's another interesting thing, because Beyonce seemed to fall into the spectrum as well. She kept showing up in there. Like, at the inauguration, Beyonce sings, "At last my love has come." Well, if you look at the image I have on freemantv.com of the first family, what I've done is, well, let me give you the whole story. I took the picture.
I have to say, that's a strange song to sing for an inauguration.
Yeah, and you'll see why. You'll see why here in a second. Because I put the picture of Barack Obama with Akhenaten together. I took Barack Obama's Time magazine photo, and I took a standard image of Akhenaten, and I sliced them in half and put them together. And they were an identical match. I did not manipulate the image whatsoever. You know, believe me or do it for yourself.
Uncanny,
right? Identical, you know? And so I'm kind of tripping out about this. But I wasn't ready to say he was a clone, you know, it's just one face, and, you know, it could be coincidence. So I put the picture of what I called Barackenaten together, and I put an asteroid hurtling towards his head in the artwork. Now, 3 months after I put this artwork on my website, they announced there's an asteroid hurtling towards planet Earth. Now, I knew this was part of the program. We had been told by the Nazi Werner von Braun that it was going to be the Red Scare, terrorism, asteroids, then aliens. So I knew asteroids was the next thing. And I wanted to preempt that. So I made this artwork of Akhenaten, Barackenaten, with an asteroid hurtling towards his head with people running in the bottom using one of his own campaign posters. And it came true, and the asteroid was known as Apophis, which was Akhenaten's Satan.
Oh my God!
And it came from a near-Earth group of asteroids known as the Aten, which was Akhenaten's god. Now, I couldn't have guessed this in a billion years. I couldn't have. I mean, come on. Of all the asteroids in the friggin' cosmos, they had to focus on Apophis coming to destroy life on planet Earth in 2025 or 2036, depending on when it got around to hitting us. And I'm just flabbergasted. So that was first key, right? All of a sudden, there's this whole connection. Then as somebody suggests to me, well, have you ever looked at Akhenaten's mother? And I'm like, well, no, I hadn't. And so I looked into her. Queen T is his mother. Now, she has colossus statues made of her in ancient Egypt. They were one of the first to build these type of monolithic images of themselves as giants, right? And Queen T ruled Egypt for quite some time as Akhenaten was raised, was coming to age. and King Tut then taking over, Queen T was still always in the background. So she was really the guiding hand in this whole situation, as far as I can tell, and she was a Nubian of the Nubian line, an outsider, in other words. Well, no one understood why Queen T got into power. She was put into power at 5 years old, and where she came from is all still kind of a mystery. But lo and behold, I look at the face of Queen T, and you can look for yourself. She is Michelle Obama. I mean, they just put that statue of a nude bust of Michelle Obama out in New York, right? Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah, boobs all hanging out. She's got the Obama rising sun, which, of course, was Akhenaten's symbol on her earrings, right? And I instead changed it with the Queen T bust, the ancient Egyptian bust of Queen T. I changed it, and I put that face on it instead and started passing that one around as the artwork that was the New York. And everybody thought it was Michelle, right? Because you look at it, they're identical. As a matter of fact, I see on the internet, people are using my split face picture as the original image of Queen T. They can't even tell I did it. Because
it's a genetically spliced version of Michelle.
They're identical. So now this is like physically impossible. Akhenaten's mother and Akhenaten, both identical to the first family, and as we start to look in the deeper, we look at the imagery of Akhenaten. Now, Akhenaten created the most realistic artwork Egypt had ever known. And yet he and his family were depicted with cone heads and weird-shaped bodies, right? Except for his wife, Nefertiti. She was always the most beautiful person in the world, right? But his mother was the Nubian, Queen T, who is Michelle Obama. Akhenaten is the husband of Nefertiti, who I believe is Beyonce. And I haven't put the picture on my website yet. I should have, but I've been reluctant because it's already so unbelievable. For me to add another one in there is just going to make it harder for people to believe. But, here's Beyonce singing At Last My Love Has Come at the inauguration, singing the national anthem at the party. And she's, well infused into Obama's life, showing up at parties at the White House with Jay-Z, things of this nature. And she is the exact match. And it freaks me out every time because all I do is cut their faces in half, and I put the two together and Beyonce and Nefertiti are identical. Well, lo and behold, if we're looking at the image of Akhenaten and we see that he has his two daughters in the imagery, and I'm like, no way. So, I mean, I've got an extensive library on Egypt. I go and I get the image. I'm looking at Akhenaten's daughters, and they are Malaya and Sasha without a doubt. One has a gaunt face, one has the chubby cheeks, Malaya, and they are identical to Akhenaten's children. So now it's all four identical to a single family. This is statistically impossible for something to just happen, right? And that's what people can't wrap their minds around. They look at it. I've been presenting this now for 6 years. And I've watched many reactions. And the first one, of course, is incredulity because people can't accept that something this crazy could happen. But you look at them and you see, and you could try and do your logic all you want. But this is a statistic impossibility. That this one family is identical to this other family. Now, it goes further because at the time of me announcing this, Akhenaten's mummy had not yet been recognized to be found. In around 1920s, the tomb KV-55 was discovered, and they found that Akhenaten's name had been scratched off. But then the tomb was resealed. They found Queen T's toilet, and they found some of Akhenaten's and the daughter's stuff in there. And so they assumed that perhaps this was Akhenaten's mummy they had found. But for 100+ years, it was never known, and it was known as the KV-55 mummy mystery. Well, it wasn't until Zahi Hawass, who was in charge of the capping of the Great Pyramid with gold for Y2K, who announced that he had found the tomb of Osiris, which is an Egyptian god, an Egyptian deity. So I don't know how they found his tomb, but it was deep, deep, deep in the earth and crazy stuff. You can watch all this in my videos. And Zahi then announced that, lo and behold, he had Akhenaten's DNA in his hand. And they announced it on the Discovery Channel, King Tut Unwrapped. And you can see them hold up the DNA strand, and it says KV55 on it. And lo and behold, if they didn't suddenly announce they had everything they needed to clone Akhenaten and his entire family. It's like, test your incredulity by going to freemantv.com and see if you can even swallow this. I'll tell you what, I had 3 grade school children write me and say that they got an A on their report of Obama being a clone.
That's great. That is great.
They said they had shocked their classmates and teachers alike and received rave reviews because every bit of evidence you need is there. And a child could prove it, but an adult will deny it.
I guess they're more open.
I mean, all the information's there. So human cloning is, one of the next big issues that we're going to have to deal with, along with mind transfer technologies. And that's what's all coming up in our near future. It's already occurring.
Yeah, I have to agree.
Okay, so this whole story went down, and we were discussing the Ordo Templi Orientis, the Nazis, and the idea of the communication with interdimensional beings using ritual magic. This was the same objective of the Typhonian order of the OTO, or the Ordo Templi Orientis. The Typhonian order, like the Nazis, believed in channeling these extra-dimensional beings and extraterrestrials using ceremonial magic. A lot of this then plays out through the mind control, because you find that pretty much the same players that were involved in the space program and the Nazi scientists that came over in Paperclip were also utilized in the mind control programs of the CIA, which came out of the Skull and Bones Society. And you start to realize that there's a large connection between these occult organizations, the mind control program, and our celebrities. So you go and look at some of Britney Spears' videos, and you'll see her fighting men in black. She blows up her own clone lab. She defeats robotic humans and has one crazy story to tell. She seemed to be a multiple, and I covered her really in depth when I produced Anna Nicole, Brittany, and Mind Control. And this was when Anna Nicole died, and I found all these very, very curious connections in the whole story. And I followed it in depth as the court case went to the Bahamas and everything with Anna Nicole. And I have a real rich video on that, which actually is on HBO right now in a small portion in a movie called Me at the Zoo. It's HBO documentaries. But anyway, so when you started to look at Britney Spears and the concepts of mind control, her shaving her head was a sign of her trying to break free of these handlers. We find that often, if not almost always, the connection goes back to Walt Disney, or Walt Disney Company. Walt Disney long dead, obviously, but Walt Disney Co., alive and rising, and at the heart of our military-industrial complex propaganda machine, which is actually generating a new kind of human, a new kind of family, a new perspective on reality, using all of the various means they have. Disney owns Star Wars, Marvel Comics, Electronic Arts Games, ABC, Miramax, ESPN, pay-per-view. They are actually the largest purveyor of porn in the world. No one knows these things about Disney, and we have a great book called Weird Stuff, Operation Culture Creation. And Weird Stuff outlines Disney's life and how this is boiled up through the military-industrial complex. But then we also get into, magic. What is magic? How does it relate to all of this? And how does this combine with all of these pieces? We're going to write 9 of these Weird Stuff books to finally outline all of these different layers of it. So you can get book 1. I highly recommend it for Christmas. Put it under the tree of all your skeptical friends, and just let the fun begin. Because weird stuff actually just starts right at the beginning. It starts at the ground floor. My wife Jamie working like a diehard on it to really get the ground floor in there. I come in a little later because I'm already a bit off of the normal path, So we want people to be able to be let in and, not get thrown into the deep end right away. So, Tavistock Institute, ideas of mind pattern programming, and the next one that we're getting more into, trauma-based mind control and high-profile rituals. So these Disney, we're talking about like Justin Timberlake. Okay, so high-profile rituals. Justin Timberlake, you look at Britney, you look at Michael Jackson, Madonna. They all have Disney connections. And what we started witnessing was the concept that we call high-profile rituals. And this is where you see Janet Jackson bearing her breast at the Super Bowl with a gold sundial on her nipple. And that's their hermaphroditic symbol. The symbol of the goddess is always with a bared breast, and the gold and the sun is always the god. And you'll often see this hermaphroditic symbolism in the magic, in the rituals. The Masonic compass and square is the same thing, or the circle, point within a circle, the circle.
Janet Jackson's wardrobe malfunction?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was just a ritual. And then these rituals have just grown, and Lady Gaga's now openly doing blood rituals on American Idol, with burning angels on the stage. So it's come a long way in the years that I've been talking about it.
Let me ask you this, Freeman. Do you think that these pop stars and actors know that they're being offered up in this ritual type of way, or do you think that they're not aware? They just go along, it's part of my choreography. What do you think?
One of the scariest things about studying these trauma-based mind control victims is that you realize they didn't know. They've been through years and years of being used in a program, being used in sex rituals, being used in covert operations for the Central Intelligence Agency, being utilized in all these ways, and they have no memory of it whatsoever. It's usually something that comes into their life that triggers them to suddenly start getting this rush of memories and these flashes, but still they have to dig their life out. Kathy O'Brien's a classic example of this. She's had a congressional hearing on her case, and so can come forward, and she'll actually be playing a bit of a role in conspiracy science theater, and she's also helping us out with weird stuff. So Kathy O'Brien was Dick Cheney's mind control sex slave, right? And she's now come forward with all of this, and also solutions with their new book, Access Denied. So I'm really excited about working straight hand in hand with Kathy. She was at my talk at the Free Your Mind conference and was blown away by what I was putting out there. So we've joined forces, and I'm really excited about that. So the scary thing is that they don't know that they've been through these things. And then there's others that want to do it, that, they have now generated a culture of it. So now it's the hip thing to do. So Lady Gaga, you read her Rolling Stone magazine article where she says that she constantly dreams of this weird Illuminati ritual where she's slicing some little girl's wrists and pouring honey into it. Yeah, this is what you're reading about Gaga and her little monsters in Rolling Stone. And like I say, she's outright performing these rituals as blood rituals on stage, on the, primetime television, on American Idol. Blood rituals with burning angels and such. So it has become, part of the culture now. But okay, let's think of another, when Whitney Houston died. Now, that was a very curious event because her daughter drowned in the tub the night before Whitney drowned in the tub. And most people didn't catch on to that. Her daughter, supposedly drug-induced, fell asleep in the bathtub and drowned and was rushed to the hospital. and then was brought back the next day when her mom, Whitney Houston, then drowned in the exact same bathtub under a drug-induced situation.
Wow.
And then the daughter was rushed to the hospital again because she had a nervous breakdown at that point. But they did not allow the coroners to take Whitney Houston's body out of that building. And they had their big party there for the Grammys. And Whitney Houston's body was kept just, 2 floors above the party, and everybody was, either very sad or didn't care. But it was it was the timing of it seemed to go along with the water goddess ritual. And so you start looking at these puzzles in different light, start trying to figure out the different scenarios of why or what is going on.
You want to break down the symbology behind Miley Cyrus's performance that everybody keeps talking about?
Well, we know that Madonna came out in her Super Bowl ritual, which she called the 33-minute sermon at the Super Bowl. And I had tried to show everyone that within these occult realms, we're dealing mostly with what I believe in the music industry with the Ordo Templi Orientis. And within this belief system or religion or magical practice, there Antichrist-type symbols which go to the Scarlet Woman. And you will see Lady Gaga or Miley Cyrus when they meet with the Queen. They are always dressed in blood red as the Scarlet Woman. You'll see the Scarlet Woman on the front cover of Sgt. Pepper's and the Beatles, where they also have Crowley in the background, but they have the Scarlet
I saw
Woman
Crowley. He's in the
foreground.
top left-hand side somewhere.
Yeah, and the Scarlet Woman's in the foreground. So the Scarlet Woman is the whore of Babylon, and it comes up much in their symbolism. And Madonna was showing signs of the mark of the beast. When you start digging into the occult aspects of the mark of the beast, they say it's the X-Men logo. It's an X within an O. And Madonna showed this on the stage over and over and over again when she was giving her 33-minute sermon at the Super Bowl. It's Russell Brand's logo for Brand X. XO is the company that makes Lady Gaga's clothes, or have recently made her clothes. And you'll find that, the X-Men, who also uses that, now owned by Disney, it's encoded in Star Wars in another way as numerological. Well, so when Miley Cyrus came out on stage out of her cyborg pedo bear, she kept sticking out her tongue. And when asked about that on Saturday Night Live later, she said she was suffering mini strokes. But she kept sticking out her tongue. And, I mean, it had to hurt. It had to have been hard. It had to have been weird to keep doing this, but she kept doing it. When you see her coming out of that cyborg pedo bear, you'll see her stroking invisible hair. And if you look at the imagery of Kali, this goddess or god of destruction and creation, but realize, okay, so she's depicting Kali. You can see it, the tongue hanging out, the hair that she's stroking that she doesn't have because her hair is turned into horns on her head. She's invoking Kali in this ritual, but we're not talking about the Hindu goddess Kali. We are talking about the Ordo Templi Orientis version of Kali, which is the Scarlet Woman or the Whore of Babylon. So then as she comes further down the stage, they have a woman placed there with her big old booty, and Miley comes up, sticks her tongue out again like Kali, and plants her face in this lady's booty, which was positioned there just for that moment. And this is the same depiction you will see in the Salem witch trials, which was one of the most heinous crimes that you could commit, was this kissing on the anus. This was something else that the Knights Templar were charged with.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah. And, I mean, you can just see it. I have the imagery. If you go to my website, it says Miley Cyrus invokes Kali. And you can look at the print of the witches and the booty, and you can see Miley with the booty and her tongue hanging out. I superimposed her face onto Kali so you can see that the relationship is there. But I always want to state that this is just like what I'm saying the mark of the beast looks like, and what I'm saying with the Kali, that this goes back to the beliefs and the practices of the Ordo Templi Orientis, and that you'll find these, relate to the Whore of Babylon. They relate. They don't go to the Hindu religion, right?
It's pretty ironic, once you start putting all the pieces together, it's kind of hard to look away,
Yeah. It becomes so obvious at this point that we gave up deciphering the high profile rituals, it's no fun anymore. They're just doing it outright now. I was hoping that when Madonna was on stage, all of my listeners were going, "Oh my God, look at that. Freeman told us this is exact symbolism he's been talking about." Because I'm really the only one that's been digging deep into the magical books. I've got all the books, and I'm digging, I'm reading, I'm learning. And I've had that thing about the Mark of the Beast on my website for many, many years. And only now is it really coming into play. So I gave the talk at Conspiracy Con, Aliens from Hell, which you can purchase on my website. And I laid this all out in there. And I showed you all the different relationships and what this Mark of the Beast really stands for in magical practices. And then a week after I'm done with the conference, Macintosh, Apple announces their new OS system, and it's the OX and this system, and there's the Mark of the Beast as their corporate logo now. And I'm just like, here I've been trying to tell you, and it's just over and over again.
Yes, once you know the symbology, it's hard to look at a logo the same way again, isn't it?
Yeah, really that's how I began. So when I discovered my dad was a Freemason when I was in college, a wizard friend of mine, a magician friend of mine who I got some of these books from, introduced me to the concepts of Freemasonry and the esoteric. And I had no idea at this point. I'm already in college, but I'd never heard of it. I didn't know that 50% of our presidents had all belonged to Freemasons. I didn't know Freemasons were ruling in every nation around the globe. I knew none of this. But then I recognized that compass square symbol, and I said, well, I know this symbol. And my dad wears this symbol. And my friend's like, well, your dad's a Mason. And I'm like, no way. And so that's when I started to find out all the other secrets about my dad, being on the submarine with Jimmy Carter and chasing flying saucers and all that. I didn't know any of that until I discovered he was a Freemason. He never once told me any of this. So I began studying Freemasonic rituals and what they do inside of these lodges. I've been to them, over and over again now, and I've filmed them all, and I'm going to show them all to you. And I'm going to get Masons on the air to describe the rituals and stuff, I'm going to show all of this to you really, really soon in Conspiracy Science Theater. As I started to decipher the aspects of the rituals, they actually were symbolically encoded into all of the corporate logos that I was looking at. So I was able to decipher every corporate logo from Arby's to Walmart to Target, and I could tell you what each of the corporate logos meant inside of a Masonic ritual. And then I also will then show you each of the founding members of these corporations being a member of the Freemasonic order. So, that's why they designed it that way. The Facebook logo, the Gmail logo, the Macintosh logo, all of this goes back into Freemasonry.
Is there a video that you could point the listeners to watch about that after the show, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to freemantv.com and you click on Freeman's TV shows, just start there, and I lay it all out. That's the very first documentary I made.
Freeman, do you want to talk about this interesting development of House Resolution 33? I think that's quite ironic.
Yeah. House Resolution 33, that was...
Freemasons Day, isn't it?
To establish St. John's Day as Freemason Day. Yeah, they've been trying that. But, the House Resolution 5, I think it was, is the one where Barack Obama will then be emperor because it removes the restrictions from presidential terms so he could be president again. If what I'm saying is correct about him being Akhenaten, then it'd be a perfect time for him to remain in power as we move into this next extraterrestrial phase of our civilization. maybe they needed a familiar face and power for when these gods return.
I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they forget what he looks like. I think it's a good time to crescendo into the bloodlines of the elite to tie this conversation up.
All right. Well, let's lay out real quick that the name Barack Obama, in the language of Jesus, in Aramaic, in Hebrew, Barak means lightning. Bama means from the heights. So the name that we've given Barry Soetoro, Barack Obama, actually means lightning from heaven in Hebrew, which is the description of Satan in the Bible.
Wow.
And you can go, I have it in the Obama clone article. You can go to the dictionary, the Hebrew dictionary, and see it for yourself. Check it out for yourself. Barack Obama means lightning from heaven. So if they had read the Bible, it would have said, and Satan fell like Barack Obama. And Satan fell like lightning from heaven. And when you play Yes We Can in reverse, it very clearly says, thank you, Satan. And of course, yes, all of this is on there as well. It's really creepy. And, this has got me puzzled because I can identify all over the place the mark of the beast. I can show you where Barack Obama has the signs of the Antichrist, even to the point that Nostradamus had said that when Mabus dies, the Antichrist will rise. And many people had tried to attribute different things to Mabus, to say even that George W. Bush was Mabus, and because of this Nostradamus prophecy. Well, lo and behold, if Barack Obama didn't put Ray Mabus, an actual Mabus, as the head of the United States Space Force, Secretary of Navy. Yeah.
We can't make this stuff up.
Mm-mm. Well, I'll tell you what, I got a section on my website, and I'll tell you, I've been building this website for 8 years, so you can spend 10 years there and never see the same thing twice. But I got a section called Weird Videos, and on that, one of those reverse speech experts did an analysis on my Barack Obama being a clone lecture, and found me to be telling the truth, and found correlations where I was actually, correct.
I think it's fascinating stuff.
At the same time, you can see where somebody proved me to be a reptilian.
Well, of course. The haters always come out, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't be any fun.
Talking about the bloodlines of the elite, when I was younger, I was brought up around DuPont country. Delaware is like DuPont Central. And my father used to say, the DuPonts always marry their own, and I didn't know what he meant by that until I got older and started digging in the rabbit hole.
It has been a curious thing that these bloodlines are at the crux of this whole situation. And from my current research, this goes back to that divine right to rule and the invasion of the Syrians and Alpha Draconans. And, from my perspective, Diana would have been brought into the bloodline of these elite to make them a little more human. I think the same with Kate Middleton. Now, I do have a show on my archives about Prince William being a clone. This was another lady's research. Pretty interesting stuff. He would end up being a clone of Jesus from the Shroud of Turin. And honestly, he really does look like the face in the Shroud of Turin. And it would be possible to get a viable DNA out of the blood there. And I don't know. But, these bloodlines are at the heart of the secret society networks. They are the heart of our whole problem. And I really believe that they have a genetic makeup that allows them better communication with these extra-dimensional beings. And if you don't believe me that they're channeling these things, you got to look into Uri Geller, you got to look into the Stargate conspiracy, you got to look into the Nine, the Ennead, the ancient Egyptian gods that they say they are channeling and getting their information from. This is those very same bloodlines, like the Astors, and others that are using. Even Gene Roddenberry was involved in these channelings and made Star Trek episodes relating to them. So it's there, it's being programmed into our social structure through Hollywood, and it all goes back and may have an extraterrestrial source. It absolutely goes back to ancient Atlantis and ancient civilizations, according to all of the sources, according to Freemasonry, according to the OTO or the Nazis or any of them. You can track this history all the way back there.
Can you give us some examples of people that are in power in the government that are actually blood relation?
Not so much. That hasn't really been my forte. But when they did announce, I would recommend probably Bloodlines of the Illuminati if you wanted to get deeper into who those people are. But when they announced that, I think it's Angelina Jolie and Mariah Carey were related to Hillary, that Britney Spears is related to McCain, that Brad Pitt's related to George W. Bush, and how this all, they're all blood, and they openly have this. It's in my lectures. I show you the blood, the trees, the family trees, and how this all works. So it's not just simply the politicians. It all runs into this entire system.
Let me ask you another question before you go. Why do you think you can go to the Vatican website called VaticanObservatory.org, and they deny the fact that their telescope is actually called Lucifer. They say it was started by somebody who works sort of with them, but not really. But what do you think that has to do with advanced technology telescope on Mount Graham that's nicknamed Lucifer?
Yeah, they had to work really hard to make that spell Lucifer, too. The truth is that is not the Vatican's telescope, but that the Jesuit astronomers do use it to seek out Goldilocks planets or other planets with possible inhabitants. The Vatican has the VAT, the VATT telescope right there in Arizona, where also the Lucifer telescope is. Now, when people did ask the Vatican about the Lucifer telescope and why that name was selected, and they said, we don't know, the Germans titled it. And, they had to work really hard to make it Lucifer. I don't remember the exact acronym right now, but, the light, ultra low, whatever, all the words you had to come up with to make it spell Lucifer. And it's a very curious time right now because the Vatican has come forward with the idea that extraterrestrials are real. They said that they are, the lead Vatican astronomer, who is a Jesuit, Benjamin Funes and Consul Magno, their two lead astronomers came forward saying that one said he would baptize E.T. no matter how many tentacles he had, and the other said that aliens are space brothers and didn't suffer original sin because they weren't born of Eve. And then as the world kind of was shocked by these two men's admonitions saying these things, they were then assigned to CERN. And I was actually making a joke about it at the time of the Norway spiral. And I said, I wonder what Benjamin Funes thinks of this. And he was the lead Jesuit astronomer for the Vatican. And lo and behold, if at that very moment they announced, and you can see my shock in my blog post, that Benjamin Funes was going to be attached to CERN. Now, what's curious is that at this moment, CERN was launching up a device that sees the anti-universe. And this is the alpha magnetic spectrometer that they put up there. And the device that they use to see the anti-universe, its corporate logo is a reptilian claw. You can't make this stuff up, like CERN's corporate logo being 666. And they have, of course, the god of destruction and creation out front of Shiva, right? This is all real. This is all happening. The Royal Society, NASA announced they had an extraterrestrial ambassador, and talk about bloodlines. It was Linda Rothschild, who is the NASA alien ambassador. the UN, the little known about office at the UN, the Office of Outer Space Affairs, they announced their extraterrestrial ambassador to be Moslin. What was her name? Moslin is their last name. And so the Royal Society came forward, and they involved the ideas of mind transfer technologies along with all of this. The Vatican's Jesuits came forward saying about ET. And so it's really curious right now when Pope Benedict, who was a Bavarian Nazi youth, suddenly quit. And then we got this new Pope, Francis, and Francis is the first ever Jesuit Pope. So now we got these Jesuit Vatican astronomers with their ET connections sending devices to the International Space Station to see the anti-universe. And meanwhile, we've got this Jesuit Pope. And at the same time, Pope Benedict, who quit, had just exonerated the Knights Templar of all their wrongdoing. And this is just, wow, I can't wait to see how this all unfolds, because this new Pope's total trip.
Something that he is the sacrificial lamb. That he is the one that's going to be sacrificed to this new order or something.
Well, it makes sense because he's been so for the poor, for the people, he's the guy, he's the cardinal that took the bus to work, you know. He's been a seeming man of the people. So those are exactly the kind of people that they destroy. They did the same thing with Bill Clinton, made him look like a man of the people. And you'll see Bill Clinton under mind control on my videos as well. And then destroyed him in front of everybody over something no one really cared about, which was, you know, a blowjob from his secretary. This was psychological warfare. It was the destroying of the man of the people in the eyes of the people. And in the same way, I think that it's possible they could do that with Pope Francis.
Now, I have to say it was great to meet. Let's give a shout out to Jamie Hanshaw. Your wife. It was great to meet you both at Free Your Mind this year, and you both have great energy. Look at people in the eyes, which I really appreciate because not many people do that. And you know, you both illuminate love and acceptance for everyone. So it was really nice to meet you both there.
Thank you, Catherine, and really. You know, that's what I hope kind of separates me from the others, is that I actually love these crazy humans. You know, I've never met one I didn't like. So, you know, it's good. It's good. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. We had a screening of a movie that, you know, in private, of course, at the Free Your Mind conference, that is due to be released soon. Do you want to tell everybody about that?
That is correct. Don Peyote. Most people don't know Dan Fogler by name. I'm surprised by this, but he was the star of Balls of Fury, the ping pong movie. You might remember him with his mutton chops, and other films such as Good Luck Chuck or Mars Needs Moms, or man, you'll find Fogler popping up all over the place once you realize. I'm shocked, but yeah, Dan Fogler contacted me, wanted me to get in his movie Don Peyote. And it was epic, wasn't it? It was so funny. Oh my
It
God.
was really funny. Tell people about what the storyline is, just briefly, if you don't mind.
The story is Warren Allman has a total truther meltdown and just goes into this psychedelic trip and becomes Don Peyote, and you know, tries to find his way through what all of us are trying to find our way through, and that is dealing with other relationships while becoming aware of how crazy life on planet Earth is. So it's really him trying to, you know, settle with his wife as he's starting to come aware and meet all these different people that are teaching him all these things about the world that he couldn't believe. And he just has a total meltdown, but in the end kind of becomes the Messiah character. And I'm really excited. They finally announced that it's going to come out this spring. So it should be in theaters this spring. Don Peyote, check it out. Anne Hathaway's in it, Dan Fogler's in it, Topher Grace, myself, and a bunch of others. Anne
Hathaway, like you've never seen Anne Hathaway, too.
Yeah.
It's quite cool to see her in that kind of role. It's all about, also about, what happens to the relationships around you after awakening.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And, it's a critical issue that really needs to be talked about, because that's why we started the Friendship Agenda. Because we kept running into people saying, well, I don't know anyone I could talk to about any of this crazy stuff. And we're like, well, we know 6 people in your town, fans of the show. And so let's start getting everybody to meet one another. So we started our own social network site called friendshipagenda.com. And that's where all of us weirdos can go and feel free to share our weirdness with one another, find each other in our own areas. And the truth is, everybody in that social network site has been hand-selected by me or then their friends. And so I actually know everyone there, and I'll tell you, everybody in the Friendship Agenda is so welcoming, and they'll invite you to Australia or wherever, they are, to come and visit. I've slept on all of their couches, so I can attest to the fact that they're completely welcoming. So the Friendship Agenda was something that we really tried to, and we're going to try and keep pushing, because I really believe that's our solution. There's no amount of attack that you could come up with to defeat the powers that be. I'm sorry, they're in our heads, and that's where we need to defeat them, because you can't fight super secret robotic space shuttles. You can't fight meteor deflection attack, meteor weapons. You can't fight electromagnetic frequency pulse technologies, but you can unite by challenging yourself to go out and make friends, go out and start to meet these other humans. And that will make the difference. That will make all the changes necessary.
Yes, because in some towns it's hard to find people you can relate to.
Yeah.
And it's nice that you can have a venue like that people can, throw around ideas or ask questions or just, make statements of what's going on in their life. I'm going to have to go check that out and join it afterwards.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd like to mention, Freeman, before we go?
Well, we do have the new television show coming out on the People's Voice, probably by 2014 if I don't get it sooner, but we're going to do some traveling over Christmas, so I might not get the show done in time. But Conspiracy Science Theater, be on the lookout for that on the People's Voice. It'll also be on freemantv.com once I get my subscriber thing all worked out. And we're working towards pumping that out through a bunch of different channels, so I'm really excited about it. Conspiracy Science Theater is going to be just a variety show of crazy conspiracy. I'm gathering together all my best friend artists that are doing anything in conspiracy and putting a big, just a crazy show together. You can help support these efforts by getting my flash drive, which includes over 100 hours of interviews and radio shows. It includes videos of all my lectures and includes even Aliens from Hell, my latest, and also a flash version of our book, Weird Stuff. So I try to give people a method. Everything on freemantv.com is free, but you can help support our future efforts by either, getting our book. I have 6 DVDs. The flash drive is all completely different information than what you find on the DVDs. And I try to give you ways to help support this, and I support the other artists, and we try to keep this thing going. So I got big plans. I hope to keep going for years and years.
This is very difficult to keep going, because it is, a labor of love. And let's face it, we don't make a lot of money for doing this. So if you can donate to Freeman or donate to Truth Connections, please feel free. I just happened to get my donate button like 2 months ago, and I've already received $1 donation. That was just from a friend who was checking to make sure the PayPal worked. So it gets frustrating at times, but I love what I do, and I just trust the universe that something is going to fall into place to help it out, and I hope people help you out as well. And
it will. And we're in the new age of chaos physics, and every time there's a new stage in physics, the world changes. And this current philosophy is minimum input, maximum output. And so people need to realize that there's, perhaps 600, 1,000 people, maybe more, maybe thousands of people listening right now. So $1 from all of those people, is nothing to you and everything to the host. And we really got to find a way to support the shows that we do really like. And $1, you know, from a multitude of people is huge. So you don't have to feel like you have to give $100 or $1,000. But usually when I say this, only one person gives $1. And it's kind of hard to do. But, you know, guys, that's where we're at. We want to bring you this alternative media. It's a new thing. You know, I was the first person on YouTube. I was one of the first people in Google Video. I was bringing you internet television before anyone had ever even thought of doing it. And, you know, you guys have kept me going. And it's just minimum input, maximum output. You know, a few bucks goes a long way.
Yes, I struggled with the decision to add a donate button, you know, for the longest time. But it's a necessary evil. I mean, computers die. You need to pay your cable bill. It costs money. Not, you know, I don't even care about getting paid for my time. I care about paying for the overhead. And that's, you know, I'm sure that's what you want to do too, is to keep pumping out new stuff to keep things going. And I never wanted to be the kind of person to go live and say donate. And I don't want to have to be that way. So, I mean, there is Joe just tells me there's 221,338 people that listen to the show tonight. So you can, small percentage of those people can help your eye out. That would be very, very much appreciated.
Yeah. 1/4, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you very much for being on with us tonight, Freeman. It was a great show.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. We'll have to get you back on it again in the future.
Yeah, you know, we got to come at this with fun in our heart because, you know, I look at all the darkest, most deepest, and heinous things going on, but you got to keep your heart there and keep the fool alive and share the love because that's the only path out of here.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to end the night. Thank you very much for being here, and tell Jamie I said hello. Give her a hug for me. All right. Okay, everyone. Tonight's ending song is by Fred Cusinado. More of his music can be found on Reverb Nation. The song is called Colombian Queen. Thank you on behalf of myself and the Truth Connections team. Until next time, be safe and be good to each other. Peace.